Generation Nation presents the 2013 Charlotte Mayoral Candidates Forum featuring questions from Charlotte youth. The forum was held on October 15th at Metro School in downtown Charlotte.
Thank you. Good evening. Buenas noches. Buenos. It's evening, right? Not tardes. It's afternoon. Dude, I know my Spanish. Watch out. Well, I'm Patrick Cannon. But Patrick Cannon who? What? I'm a native Charlottean. I'm a father, a husband, a businessman of 15 years. Well, one actually who is a servant leader as well. One that was elected back in 1993 at the age of 26, serving a district, Midwest and Southwest Charlotte. Thereafter, I was elected citywide, and at that point in time, I became Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Charlotte. In each term that I've been elected as Mayor Pro Tem, I've actually had the ability to be able to serve in the capacity of mayor when the mayor's been absent. I did so by way of former Mayor Pat McCrory, I did so by way of former Mayor Anthony Fox, and I do so by way of current mayor, interim mayor, Patsy Kinsey. And it's with that has prepared me to be able to lead and run this city in a way that's most efficient and effective. I will tell you that issues that are important to me, as I hope that they are to you and your family, would be economic development, public safety, housing, and of course, a comprehensive transportation plan. As we talk about economic development, right now in the city of Charlotte, we have approximately 84,000 people that are unemployed in the Charlotte area. Something has to be done about that, and we can talk more about it going forward. Secondly, we have to make sure that Charlotte is a business-friendly city. There are some that say that it's hard to do business in the city of Charlotte because of our permitting process. And so, based upon my leadership as mayor, I've worked to make sure that what we do is to find a way to have the city and the county departments coexist in one location so that the permitting process can flow a lot smoother. Housing. For those that seek housing, that can least afford to pay for it in the way of our veterans, homeless, our seniors, we need to do all in which we can to be about making sure that they're getting the type of support in which they need. That's why, of course, I went out and asked that we spend $10 million to make sure that we're able to meet that need. Transportation. It's important for us to be able to have sidewalks, good quality roads, a comprehensive transportation plan, bike lanes, alternative modes of transit, so that we, of course, can help our environment, but then beyond that, make sure that we're able to get to and from our destinations accordingly. And lastly, crime. I'm chairman of public safety, and we have seen historic lows relative to crime in our community. However, we still need to make sure that we're doing our fair share as both youth and adults to make sure we're preventing the next crime, because working together works. Remember, listen, neighborhood watch means nothing if nobody's watching. So make sure we all do our fair share and our fair part with that. I'm Patrick Cannon, vying for the mayor of the city of Charlotte, and I ask for your support. Thank you so much.
I'm not Edwin Peacock, but I'm here representing him today. He actually should be here. I'm hoping he'll be here later if he's able to make it. But he's asked me to come and talk to all of you. And I'm actually really proud and excited to do that, to talk to you on his behalf and to give you a little bit of insight into his campaign and what Edwin's about, and how he sort of envisions the future of Charlotte. Because that's really what's so incredible about this group. This is a group of kids. I think I see myself and a few of you out here. I was in high school. I grew up in Charlotte. I was on the debate team, and I got involved in these sorts of after-school activities. I would spend my Tuesday uptown listening to candidates talk about the city and city issues. Maybe not exactly that kind of that, but that kind of thing. And so I really can relate to the interest that you all have here today. And I remember when I was your age in Charlotte, thinking about the future of the city and thinking about how to get involved. You know, it was important to me that what we had was a city that could sustain itself well into the future. That no matter where I went to college, no matter what I did after that I could come back to Charlotte, that I could get a job, that I could raise a happy family, that it would be the kind of place where other young people wanted to come and succeed and to bring good things, to bring business, to bring life back to this community. And that's really what it is. That's what it was for me. I left Charlotte for a long time. I went to college and I went to graduate school and I became an attorney. And then I came back to Charlotte, and that's what I do now. I practice law. And I met Edwin Peacock about 2.5 years ago, and he sat me down at Panera Bread, actually at breakfast, and we got to talking. And he said, I think you should run for city council. That's what he said to me. And I laughed at him. I said, I can't run for city council. That's crazy. I'm not built for that. I don't know the first thing about city council. I don't know how to run a city. I'm not qualified. And he said, fine, I will help you learn. And Edwin helped me to get appointed to 2 committees that report to city council. One is called the Citizen Transit Advisory Group. They advise the council on issues involving transit, like the trains and so on. And the other is the Privatization and Competition Advisory Committee. And that's a committee that advises council on how to make council, city functions a little more efficient, run a little bit more like a business. And so I started to learn about how the city operated and how the city worked. And partly at Edwin Peacock's urging, I ran this past year for the District 6 seat on Charlotte City Council, and unfortunately lost in the primary. But now I've stayed involved, and I've stayed involved in campaigning, and I've stayed involved in the political process. And through that process, I've gotten to know Edwin Peacock very, very well. I've come to understand the kind of leader he is, the kind of person that reaches out to people like me, who thought I had no chance in politics, to show me a little bit about how this city works. He took me down to City Hall and he said, this is where we meet and this is what we do and these are the people that make the decisions and you could become one of them. Get involved. That's what Edwin Peacock said to me, and I did. And I did. And a few years later, short years later, I'm standing here talking to all of you about his vision for your future, the future of Charlotte that all of you are going to have to live in. And I hope that you'll want to come back to when you have that opportunity in your lives. So as you're thinking, as you're listening to the candidates talk, and you listen to sort of as I try to articulate Edwin's vision, and you listen to Mr. Cannon try to articulate his, think to yourselves, what kind of city do I want to build? What kind of foundation do I want to see myself living in the future? And is the candidate that I select for mayor going to be the person that is thinking forward, thinking ahead, letting our past successes build a foundation for us, but also understanding that we've got a different city now than we did when Mr. Cannon was first elected to city council. We have a different city than we did when I was sitting in those chairs in high school. And we're going to have a different city as you grow and as you become a part of it. So I want you to think through that. I haven't said anything specific yet, but I will. And I just hope that that's the takeaway that you all have today as you make your decisions in the kids voting or programs or whatever you have. So it's been a pleasure to meet you.
Charlotte Latin. My question is, both candidates cite job creation as the most pressing issue in Charlotte right now. And so my question is, how specifically do you hope to accomplish this, and what areas of employment do you hope to target?
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Katie, for your question. There are a few ways to be able to address the issue. One is to make sure that we have leadership that has already built in the type of rapport needed in order to be able to work with individuals and entities like the Charlotte Chamber, the Charlotte Regional Partnership, which focuses on the region, to make sure that we're focused in on entities like the Charlotte Regional Business Authority, which helps recruit and bring different types of tournaments and conventions here, and also our Hospitality and Tourism Alliance. That's critical. But also what's critical is someone who has built-in rapport with speaking to ambassadors like I do. I've been engaged right now with the ambassador from South Africa, and so they have an interest in renewable energy. Well, here, the areas of focus right now happen to be in terms of fast-growing industries here, retail, healthcare, office, real estate, and manufacturing. Those areas are very critical in terms of what happens. Charlotte used to be a place that was very balanced. In as much as we had a lot of white-collar opportunities, we had just as many blue-collar opportunities. We need to be able to go back from whence we came in order to create the type of balance needed in order to be able to move Charlotte forward. That being said, today I just found myself at another place that's going to be a textile mill, something that we used to have in the way of a place called Cone Mill that used to be here. We used to have Converse tennis shoes here as a manufacturer. We used to have General Tire here as a manufacturer. We used to have Fruhoff Corporation, a trucking company, actually, where my mom worked, who labored pretty hard for us. It was just my mom and me growing up, so I watched her labor like that. But it's going to be critical that we have people who have backgrounds in being able to recruit companies to come to the city of Charlotte. I have that background, and I believe that I can continue to work to move us forward. One last thing I want to make mention to you about is this. Right now, one of the things we have coming on board is something called the intermodal facility. This intermodal facility will be a place where all types of jobs, from IT all the way down to the person who wants to drive a forklift and or a truck, will have an opportunity to participate in this. But it's going to mean that we have to allow some things to happen. How many of you have been listening to what's been going on with the airport? Heard anything about it? Yeah. And so we have to make sure that our airport remains as low cost operating as it should be. For instance, per person in Miami is $22 a person. Here in Charlotte, the cost per person at our port is only $2. The Panama Canal will open up, actually will be expanded, I should say, in 2015. We need to be prepared to have leadership that will understand how to be able to make us internationally known as a premier city to be able to do business in. It's that said that I'm working to set up what will be a global trade center for Charlotte and our region right here in the Piedmont. And I'll talk more about that because I want to be mindful about time, because we only have like a minute or two to be able to talk to you, so I want to be mindful about that, and we can talk further about it along the way. And hello to my man from Providence Day. It's good to see you.
Thank you for your question. You know, it's interesting. One of, and this might be a difference in approach between Edwin Peacock and Patrick Hannon, is this, which is the idea that, you know, so many people want to ask, gosh, we need more jobs, we need more jobs, we need more jobs. What are you, people who are trying to run for office, going to do to create jobs? And it's a good question. We should ask everybody we can talk to, how are we going to create jobs in this country? City Council's role in job creation is a supplemental one. It's a support role. The government, folks, isn't responsible for creating jobs. The private sector is. The businesses that are out there employing people are. The energy companies and the manufacturing companies and the folks that are out in the world selling things to people, that's the private sector. Those people create jobs. And the government, the city government, has an important supporting role to play in that, but often it gets in the way. And I think, you know, one of the examples of that is a friend of mine is a small business owner who tried to open a catering company in Charlotte and couldn't. She couldn't open one. She wanted to open one. She wanted to employ people, but she couldn't find a commercial kitchen where she could lease space. And the reason was it was just too hard to get the permits. The government was in her way. The government was standing in the way through the permitting process of her getting that business opened and creating those jobs. So one of the most important things that a mayor or a city can do is to take a really hard look at itself, to look in the mirror and say, hey, are we really helping businesses? Are we really helping job creation? Or are we standing in the way? And if we're standing in the way, then we have to make difficult decisions to streamline those operations and make sure that the businesses who badly want to employ people in the area are free to do that. And so that's really one thing that the city council can do. And the other thing is to use that government to make Charlotte an attractive place to be. And that is to collaborate with the region and to collaborate with the Metropolitan Transit Commission to create a transit system and overarching infrastructure that makes it an attractive place for businesses to relocate and to bring those jobs. And so we should continue to do that, and I believe that's all part of Mr. Peacock's plan.
Is there time to just clarify a couple of things? Because that's fine, I won't need that much time. The city actually does work to create jobs. Let me tell you how. There's something called a business investment grant, okay? Have anybody heard of Chiquita? Okay, there you go. And so as a result, here's a testimony right here of how the city engaged in creating a job for somebody. Very good example. There are plenty of others, Husqvarna, Electrolux, I could go down to Gray Bar Electric, Rooms to Go. The city's been involved in that. Then beyond that, we have the CIP, which is called the Capital Improvement Plan. That's going to generate 18,000 jobs. And if you're against the CIP, it means you're against those 18,000 jobs that will be forthcoming. So I just want to share those few things with you. I don't want you to walk out of here thinking that the city doesn't have a role. It's not their core responsibility, I would agree. It is with the private sector. However, we do play a role in creating jobs, and I think we need to continue to make sure we have leadership that continues to do that. That is, make smart investments by way of the business investment grants.
Hi, my name is Morgan Bozarian, and I'm a senior at Oswego High School. Earlier, you spoke about how we're the future of Charlotte, and I want to know, what are your plans for preparing us to be the future of Charlotte, not only in terms of education, but in terms of involving us in local government?
Edwin Peacock has been very clear, actually, on his campaign that the city government is one piece of this community, and it's not a sort of an umbrella under which the entire community has to answer. It's a piece of the community. It's an important piece, and it should collaborate with other pieces of this community, like the county government and the school board, and to be a resource, to be available to groups like yours, and to develop relationships on the school board. I mean, so frequently, in fact, when I was campaigning, people would often say to me, hey, I have this problem with my school, with my neighborhood school. And it's tempting at that point to say, look, I'm running for city council, I don't have anything to do with your school. But you do, but I did. I mean, we do. As people, as leaders in the city government, we do. And we form relationships with folks on the school board, and we form relationships with each other to try to support the schools and to support those kinds of programs. Now, I can give you an example of what Edwin Peacock has done, at least for me, and I gave it briefly at the beginning, which is just to actually reach out. I mean, I'm an example, I'm living proof of an example where he really reached out and sort of found a person that was interested in government and said, hey, how can I develop you? How can I find a way to plug you in and get you involved? I've seen that in him, and I don't know, honestly, I can't speak to specifics in terms of what kind of overarching plans he does have, but I do know that he's very concerned about developing the future leadership of the city, and I'm living proof.
And I think Edwin may have just pulled up.
Okay.
Now you can still look this way. I'm just, maybe. Charlotte will be regarded as one of the premier places to live by way of those domestically and internationally. A place where people can be proud to live, work, raise a family, recreate, and hopefully relocate a business to the city of Charlotte. That's the vision that I would have for our community. But then beyond that, in terms of what we have done for you specifically, under my leadership, we had, when I first got on council, the Youth Involvement Council. Today, you're called the Youth Council. Me and another colleague decided that it was high time that we brought that program back. And so we found a way to be able to participate in what we see now in the way of a wonderful sea of diversity in terms of you being engaged. The other thing I brought into fruition happened to be a cadet program. It operates out of UNC Charlotte, and it allows you as youth to go through what would be a law enforcement program, and if you so desire to be involved in forensics or you want to become a police officer, you at that point will have an opportunity to be engaged in that. The other thing is the Mayor's Mentoring Alliance. The Mayor's Mentoring Alliance came into fruition by way of former Mayor Pat McCrory, but it happened by way of my relationship with his brother, Phil McCrory, who was my big brother through Big Brothers and Big Sisters program growing up. That's something that I want to continue to see us engage in with area youth. And then beyond that, and more importantly, the Mayor's Youth Employment Program. That's something where some of you have been participating, and it's going to be key that you remain a part of that. This past summer, we had 300 youth to participate in internships with 80 companies, 80 being the highest number of corporations. I would like to, as mayor, expand that number to more than 80 companies and allow more youth to be able to be involved in not just internships, but apprenticeships. Thank you.
Hey, it's Edwin. My name is Clarissa Brooks. I go to South Mech. My first question.
Hey, we're both South Mech Sabres over here. Yeah.
But my first question is, considering your first actions if you are elected mayor, what would be your first like, not mandates, but things you would do towards the city budget, because I know that that's a big issue in Charlotte when it comes to budgeting with transportation infrastructure. So what would be some of those first things, and how would you do your best to kind of calm the, not anger, but controversy that it may cause? Controversy, that's bad.
So the question is, what is it that we would focus on in terms of priority? First priority? In budgets? Well, you know, we've gotten through our budget process already, and so we've set the budget up where you can expect to see on the ballot, future ballots, bonds for 2014, 2016, 2018, 2020. 16, 18, yeah. And so they'll be divided up differently. Different portions of our community will be on the ballot to receive different things, because what we want to do is to make sure that we have the proper connections in place. We want to make sure that neighborhoods that need improvement are addressed. We want to make sure where infrastructure is needed to be created, that we do that. That where affordable housing is needed, that we will be a part of that. Where those 18,000 jobs I made mention of earlier, that those will come into fruition. And also where there's a need for public safety measures to be met. For instance, one of the things that the budget will do, it will bring about 6 police divisions throughout the city of Charlotte. That in turn will allow us to be able to make sure that we have more police in your communities, around our faith-based areas, as well as businesses, to ensure that we're working to prevent the next crime. So those are some things that we already have engaged in, but I would tell you, first and foremost, priority number 1 for me is going to be making sure that we crack down on doing what we can to reduce the rate of unemployment in this community. Thank you for your question.
One thing that concerns me, and it also concerns Edwin Peacock, is that the city council has just raised taxes. They just did that this year. And they raised taxes to fund a plan that purports to invest a lot of money, almost, well, now it's a little less, but it was up to $1 billion of taxpayer money in little projects all around the city. Now, folks, if you were going to invest a lot of money in a project, you know, you'd want to do some kind of research, some analysis, make sure you were going to get your money's worth for that project. You'd want to make sure that the money that you were spending on that project, especially if it was $1 billion of other people's money, was really worth spending, was really worth doing, not just to do it, right? And I think that's one thing that concerns Edwin a lot. You know, there's been a lot of talk about a streetcar. He's been an opponent of it. And he's been an opponent because he believes that that streetcar leapfrogged other priorities in the community, that it has kind of jumped ahead of other things that this community needs more. And my understanding is that he would continue to oppose that. That would be one of the kind of first things that he would be concerned about. I think that Edwin Peacock is also very concerned about transparency in city government. Very recently, you know, your city government is elected by you, it answers to you, the people, right? And it needs to be transparent about how it's spending those tax dollars. I mean, y'all know what transparent means. It means open to the public. In the context of city government, it means you can see through it, you can see right into it. And there's been some decisions you may have heard about the Panthers. Anybody hear about the Panthers decisions that made about the Panthers money, right? They were made in secret. They were made behind closed doors. Lots of decisions were made behind closed doors by city council, and I think that concerns Edwin Peacock very much. That would be one of the very first things that he would go after, is that transparency issue. So those are two things, that the sort of expenditures of money that he finds to be of some concern, and the transparency issues that he finds to be of some concern. And I think those would be on his priority list.
Rebuttal. Please know and understand that Charlotte, your city, our city, is not shrinking. We are growing. During the recession, we grew by 100,000 people. The MSA, the surrounding area, grew by 200,000 people. We continue to grow today. How many of you think that we should not address homelessness? How many of you think that we should not address veterans who need affordable housing to live in? How many of you believe that we should not be doing things to help with safing up our community? How many of you believe that we shouldn't do anything to create jobs? That's what the CIP did. That's what the budget did in itself. It went up 3 cents for that to occur. Hope that's worth it.
Thank you, guys. Also, South Neck Homecoming is Friday, so
was just wondering, besides affordable housing, what's your kind of goal for impacting the homeless community positively, whether it be through organizations or benefits?
It's not. No. To address homelessness, one of the things that that happened under my watch was the approval of $10 million to address that very issue. Homelessness is a real problem in our community, and we need to do all which we can to make sure we are providing housing for those that wish to have it, because everyone that's homeless, believe it or not, they don't want to be in shelters. They may want a place to stay, but we have to continue to make sure we're doing all which we can to address that issue. So that's one thing. I'm also working with a child's place, Annabelle Sudreth over there. There are 4,997 kids approximately in CMS that are homeless. About 60% of that number actually are represented in shelters. The others happen to be what they call couch homeless. So they're with a parent, but they still need to have a place to be able to call home per se. I want to work with CMS. I want to work with the Housing Partnership and others that can help us to be able to hopefully buy land, really do a land swap with the city, with CMS land. And that will help us to buy down the cost for what a developer will have to pay for it. Because right now, developers don't want to build affordable housing because they say they can't make any money from it. Well, if there's an opportunity for us to be able to do something with land costs where it's reduced, it goes them at a reduced rate, at that point they would be willing to do so. And that's the way that we can address that issue across the board. Part of it.
I'll confess to not knowing exactly if Peacock has a specific plan about homelessness. I do know, however, that I've talked to him about affordable housing, and I've talked to him about just general budget issues in terms of just prioritizing spending. And where that actually can come, and I'm going to do a quick tie-in because I don't know the specific answer to your question, I apologize. But the quick tie-in here is that the city council's budget is made up of property taxes. And property taxes make housing more expensive. It makes it more expensive to live in your house if you have to pay higher property taxes on it. And so if you have a council that continues to raise property taxes, you are continuing to make housing more expensive for people. And so that's not rocket science, folks. That's just sort of basic math. And so I do know that just the quick tie-in to my previous answer is that when you are conscientious and careful about how you spend folks' tax money, then you are doing something to make sure that their housing remains affordable, that they're not tempted to go live in another city with lower property taxes. And so that's my tie-in. And I hope that if he comes, maybe he can give you a more specific answer about homelessness specifically. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Bryce Cracknell. I attend North Mac High School. My question is a little bit of a change of pace here, but Charlotte has become a thriving city for culture and arts, and how would you work to continue to produce, how would you continue to help Charlotte grow in the area of the arts at the student level and professional levels?
Thank you for your question. More power to North America. I think it's what we've done, maybe it hadn't been realized. We have the Gantt Center, we have the Mint, we have the Beckler, and Mayor Pat McCrory had asked for a committee to be put together because they didn't want to put the expense on property tax, on the property tax, right? And so he put me on this committee to find out what revenue sources we could come up with. And we struggled with it for a long time. Luther Cochran actually chaired the committee. And one of the things I ended up doing was having to go and work on my relationships to speak with the Hospitality and Tourism Alliance to get them to work with me to find a revenue source. I was going to look to tax myself. I'm in the parking business. But we moved from there and ended up looking at a car rental tax. And so as to not put that expense on the backs of the taxpayers, we used that idea that I had then, and today we can enjoy the arts in Uptown Charlotte. We still can work with the Arts and Science Council to talk about some things that are going on right now in their minds about how we can engage neighborhoods to be able to have arts in their community. And so we went to Houston, Texas to look at what they were doing there. So I think a lot of it, to answer your question, stems from best practices that are going on around the country to determine how we can fund those types of things, because funding will become an issue with regard to the arts. So it's going to be critical that we pay some attention to that. And professionally, I can't draw, but my daughter can, and she's engaged in that kind of stuff. So I think it's important, really, for any of you that are interested in any segment of the arts, that you continue to try to give us ideas. That's what your youth council is also about. And so we as a body have to be open to listening to you and your ideas. Would love to get your feedback. Thank you.
I paused a little bit because I was struggling with the question, because I was actually just speaking to Edwin about this exact topic this morning. And I'm a little bit more politically conservative than Edwin is, actually. I'm more kind of on the Republican side than he is. And so we were actually debating this very issue. Yeah, I'm a little bit more to the right. And we were debating this very issue, and I sort of asked him at some point, I said, well, what do you think about arts funding? And, I'm not sure that the city government, personally, I'm not sure that the city government ought to be, real active in funding the arts. But he really, he pushed back on me. He said, no, you know what, Kate? He said, I believe arts are important. They're really important. They make this city a great place to live. I call it the disco chicken on Tryon Street, the mirrored Phoenix thing, it's awesome, right? I mean, when you walk down Tryon Street and you see all that art, it makes it a great place to live. It makes it a great place to walk around. That's where I work, is uptown. And Edwin was right. I mean, he's right. When you can go and walk around a city and there's this vibrant art community and there's people who have room to be creative and the community supports it, and the private dollars support it, you've got your business community supporting it, you've got the Arts and Sciences Council supporting it, they're a clearinghouse for private donors, and the city's willing to chip in a little bit to support it. That does make the city a great place to live. It does shape our city, it does shape our culture, it is very important. And I hope that people, if you're interested in art and you want to make the city more beautiful and that's your path, I hope you take it. I really do, because it really has made Charlotte an exciting place to grow up in as we watched the art community expand. That's all I've got about it, is that he pushed back on me on the issue. He's more in favor of public funding for arts than I am, for whatever that's worth. There you go.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm Fallon. I go to Cato Middle College, and my question is, what are your plans for Eastland Mall?
I hate to do this to you, Fallon, but I don't know. I could tell you what I think, but y'all aren't here to know what I think. So I'm going to punt on that one, and I'm going to let him try to answer maybe when he gets here. Thanks.
The plans, and that's fair. No, the plans for Eastland Mall would be to create a vibrant portion of our city that would allow for a trickle effect to occur beyond that one site. Because anything that goes there has to go beyond that one site. That has to be the vision for making sure we want to bring something about for that area. You've heard about the studios going to Eastland Mall, right? Well, in order for that to come into fruition and the mixed-use development that is supposed to accompany it, there's something that's major that must happen, and it has to happen in Raleigh. The General Assembly must come together and say that we will support having film tax credits to be able to come into play. If those film tax credits do not come into play, what's been presented before the City Council that we've signed off on goes away. And we really hadn't signed off on it. The City Council right now, what we're doing is, the city staff is doing its due diligence to determine if we want to be in this game or not. So here's the other question. The other question is, what happens if the city doesn't, if this does go south? The one thing that can happen is this: the city can say, you know what, we're going to cut our losses, and then we're going to allow the private sector to be able to just sort of move along with the program. And so that's the idea. Hopefully something will come that will be very good for that area, because it's well overdue. At this stage, I'd like to introduce Edwin Peacock, candidate for mayor, and my former colleague. Y'all give Edwin a big hand.
See, thank you for covering. Edwin, how are you?
In case y'all want to take a picture.
Yeah.
We're friends.
Yeah, we're friends.
Yeah. So anyway, so Edwin, I just answered her question with regard to Eastland Mall. She wanted to know what we thought about Eastland Mall. Well, you can repeat your question.
I want to know what your plans are for Eastland Mall.
Patrick and I were in a forum last week from East Charlotte, and we both know that how pivotal and how important Studio Charlotte's proposal is. It certainly is a risk that's going to be mainly on a private developer. They are asking for some government involvement. I think that we all would like to see less government involvement, not more, because private enterprises do the best when they put the most at stake and are willing to take the risks. government's just not very good at picking winners and losers, but Bert Hess from Studio Charlotte has a very bold and I think a very forward-thinking proposal on what we could do in East Charlotte, and I hope that we're successful. I'm definitely pro-film. I'm definitely pro-film incentives in this state. I hope that that continues, but that is obviously a state issue, not a city issue.
I'll just have to bend down a little bit.
He's a hard worker.
Hi.
Stuart, good to see you.
My question to both of you is this kind of overarching with the tax increase and things like that going on with the city. Like, I know my brother who used to live on Rama Road. He decided that when he was going to buy a new house, rather than buy one in Charlotte, he went and bought one just across the border in Union County. He gets all the amenities of Charlotte. It's 2 minutes from 485, and he pays lower taxes, quite a bit lower actually. So, how would you try to get someone to move to Charlotte when they can go across Union County or across Fort Mill and even pay even lower taxes and still just be 5 minutes from Valentine or something?
Sure. Well, here's what your brother doesn't know. Those taxes are going up in Union County. And you know why? It's because of the same reasons why they're going up in Charlotte to some extent in Mecklenburg County. We aren't shrinking. We're continuing to grow. Union County is growing it's growing gangbusters. Look at the level of development that's occurring over there. At some point, they're going to be up somewhere. Now, the question becomes how much. I don't know. But I do know that they aren't shrinking. They're continuing to grow, largely in part because they think that they're getting away from Charlotte taxes. What we have tried to do, or at least what I've tried to do over the years in which I've served, is to not be for property tax increases all the time. In fact, I think in my years of service for the 16 years, there's only been one property tax increase, and that's the one we've been discussing tonight. Now, there have been capital improvement plans, but beyond that, that's it. And so I think as much as we can hold the line on not raising property taxes, we should do so. In fact, we should do something that I did years ago, if it affords itself to us again, and that is to roll back the rate on the property taxes. We've been able to do that, and we may be able to do that again coming up soon and very soon. Thank you.
She wants to ask a question too. Oh, you're the waiver. Okay, I see. Okay. Stuart, your question about property taxes answers something that I'd been wondering about our public safety employees. We have about 1,800 sworn police and fire officers in the city of Charlotte. They do a great job. But when I ask police and fire where they live, what I find out is by far the vast majority of them live not in Charlotte. And when I ask them what are the two reasons why they live where they live, and they will almost indefinitely say lower taxes and better schools. And so we are a border city. We are a border state. We are in constant competition with our friends in the South. And actually, when you look at ourselves as a region, North Carolina, one of the highest tax states in the Southeast, has now recently, through the state legislature, lowered its tax rate so that we can be in parity with Virginia and South Carolina ultimately. And state income taxes in Tennessee are zero, so we can't compete against that unless we go to zero. So taxes impact behavior, guys. One of the things that Mr. Cannon and I differ on is the decision to do a property tax increase, particularly at this time in Charlotte's very fragile economic situation. I am for a capital improvement plan. I've passed 2 of them in my 4 years, and I'm certainly for improvements to our city. But you've got to ask yourself, if we want to remain a safe, we want to remain a clean, and we want to remain an affordable city, the first piece on affordability is really what's been happening to most people and why they're leaving, and we've got to stop that.
Hi, my name is Amari, and I go to Hopewell. And on my question is, because I'm doing, for my junior exit, I'm doing about child abuse and domestic violence. And I was wondering, like, what type of programs would you put in place to decrease the amount of domestic violence?
Your question would speak to the number one function that both of us do, and when when you're on public service, you realize that your first and foremost role is to protect and to serve, and so the majority of your taxpayer dollars do go to support public safety, police, and fire. The public safety component that the city of Charlotte deals with is clearly Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. But your question about specifically, you said it was domestic violence. That's obviously an issue that relates to city council, or excuse me, to Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department and who they respond to. But the services that are provided by actually the county. But it's the city that's the first responder to it, and it's our police and fire whose job is frequently on the majority of a lot of their calls are actually to break that up. And so what we need more of is we need stronger neighborhoods that have better schools in them, that keep people together, not apart, and not split up families. Obviously, some of the problems that we see in some of our most challenged neighborhoods that our reports identify is obviously some of the breakdown of the neighborhood through the breakdown of neighborhood schools, to facilities, to proximity, to the infrastructure that people want to live in a safe neighborhood. And so domestic violence is just one symptom of an overall problem that, as mayor, I'd hope to obviously improve by building stronger neighborhoods.
There's an entity that I'm a part of today called Enough. It's a lowercase e, capital N, capital O, U-G-H-T. I'm sorry, U-G-H. And Enough, I'm going back to school here, homeschool. And so Enough actually is a prevention organization. In fact, it's the only prevention organization in the country. Every other entity happens to be an advocacy group. And so one of the things I would look to do as mayor, and even before mayor, if possible, because I've started the process, making sure that we come up with a policy that we don't tolerate domestic violence in this occurrence, in this current state. Matter of fact, I think CMS just approved a policy that I saw something about yesterday on the news. Every 7 seconds, a woman is having to face an ordeal as such. Nobody, man, woman, or child, should have to go through that. And I really believe that we ought to be doing all of which we can to deal with that issue. It's something that's actually on my handbills because it's so important, and I think we have to do something about it. As mayor, one of the things I would be doing is continue to work with the police chief, because he's also been a part of what that experience has been about, and Eric O'Brien with Channel 9 News. We're all working collectively to do what we can to help in that regard. Thanks for your question. It's a good one.
So hello, my name is Jalen Carrington, and I'm a junior at Charlotte Country Day School. And my question for both of you today is, what are your views on gay marriage, and how do you intend on using your position of influence to improve LGBT rights in order to make Charlotte a more diverse community?
Since 2007, I've been endorsed by the LGBT community and the MECPAC, their local organization here. And I think the reason why they endorsed me was, number one, that I wanted to have an open dialogue with them, and number two, from a city policy standpoint, the one thing that they wanted to see was the word sexual orientation added to our hiring practices. Our sisters in the county, 600 East 4th Street, had that in their language, and we didn't. We had a lot of public safety employees who didn't feel like in the very male world and the very macho world of the police department that they could advance if they felt as though they had been outed, and that maybe that advancement wouldn't be a part of that if we didn't have a policy there. I supported that, and I supported the efforts behind the scenes to make sure that we could change that policy, and since then our city has done just that. The second thing that they've passed in the past 4 years has been same-sex marriage benefits, or same-sex benefits for domestic partners. While I wasn't there to vote for it, I would have voted for it. My views on same-sex marriage really go back to a race that I found myself in a year ago. I was running for Congress briefly for Sue Myrick's seat, who was our longtime congressional representative. The issue on the ballot, while not a federal one, was a state one called Amendment 1. I was the only Republican who voted against Amendment 1, or said he was publicly against Amendment 1 because I thought it was bad for business and it was legally unnecessary. But the other thing it speaks to is, where does this country decide on where gay marriage should be allowed and not be allowed? And so I hold up the DOMA decision and the DOMA decision that the courts made, bounce it back to the courts, or bounce it back to the states to allow them to decide which state would want to have or not have a legally recognized marriage. So my position and why I was against Amendment 1 was because I was for civil unions, and people that were advocating against or for Amendment 1 were not really aware that that would have prevented that from occurring in the state of North Carolina. So that's my stance on not only the LGBT community and the inclusiveness that I've shown as a candidate and also as an elected official, but really my stance on where I think that issue is so important to your community, has been and will be in this city. And also I'm a Country Day graduate, so that should give me a big point.
And for the things that Edwin spoke about in terms of sexual orientation pieces, I supported, actually went to our former city manager, Kurt Walton, in his office to even bring the subject matter up, and he basically handled it there. It didn't even have to come before the city council. He basically did it from his office because it was purely an HR move that could have been made by way of his pen, and that happened. The same thing is true for the, well, not in terms of the action, the city council did take action on domestic partner benefits. That was something, of course, I supported as well. With regard to Amendment 1, that's something that I'm not on board with per se, and that's my position. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
My name is Ricky Birch from Butler High School. And what are your plans with Independence Boulevard? Because I know driving down it like every day, it's kind of like all these businesses around it. I mean, they're getting knocked down. Then you have like one hair salon over here that's just like, you know, like what are your plans with it?
Well, golly, that's a loaded question. It's really getting the state to conform and do some things that they should be doing. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, there should have been an overpass per se that could sort of go up and then come back down. It costs a lot of money to be able to do that. I recognize it and realize it, but it would have kept those businesses open. It would have made things fluid still where people could make a left in or a right out, but at the same time, it's a freeway and it's so dangerous until it would have made it a real challenge to be able to do that. It's my hope though that we can still be a part of trying to create opportunity along that stretch like we did with the Walmart. There's a super Walmart that's over there. Some people love it, others may question it, but that's working out well over there as it is. But in as much as we can encourage people to go over there and reinvest back into that portion of our community, that would be a good thing. I remember going to the Capri Theater as a kid. That was before you all were thought about, and probably me too. But it was a great place for us to be able to congregate and take in a good movie. So it's my hope that we'll be able to bring something back over there in that area.
Your question speaks to what I would say is my broader vision for the city of Charlotte, which is to create a city that's seamless. And one of the seams that's been created in our city has been the decision by NCDOT to create that Jersey wall, that barrier wall that creates a barrier to where you're in one part of Charlotte, and once you cross over Independence, you realize that you're in an area that's maybe not as safe and maybe doesn't have strong neighborhoods, and that's what we need to do away more of. And how we're able to do away with that is obviously a comprehensive neighborhood plan, obviously a comprehensive area plan, which we do have in place for the East Charlotte region. And my question earlier, and my point earlier about how film could be a catalytic change for that region, it won't undo what took almost 20 years of that bad decision on how we redivided Independence. It won't undo that decision overnight. It's going to take a block-by-block approach to do just that. And a big part of East Charlotte and the identification of this city for so many years, you all, is what we refer to, and Patrick and I would both refer to as the old Coliseum. It's a historic site. It's the largest freestanding dome in the world in 1954, but it's a hallmark to what we were known as before Charlotte really had all the great things that we have in Uptown. But we have opportunities, particularly on the Monroe Road section on the backside of those shopping centers, that we have a number of plans and some land use decisions that have been made during my time on council, which are going to be exciting, and they're going to butt up right up to East Mech, which is right there as well too. But what we're planning on doing in the east part of Charlotte has started with the Walmart decision, but there's so much more work to be done, and it's that seam that I'd like to see removed and to see a really strong transit plan help catalytically change that region.
Hello, my name is Maya Hogwood, and I go to West Charlotte High School. And I just want to know specifically, what's your plan for like transportation in Charlotte?
I'm a supporter of the 2030 Transit Plan, which is a multimodal approach to transit planning. Your next mayor is going to be the member of the Metropolitan Transit Commission. You all don't realize this, but your parents and you all participate in the payment of something called a half-cent sales tax. And how we've been able to build out our transit system is to use this half-cent sales tax based off of priorities that those amongst the MTC, this body that was created to try to get Charlotte out of the transit business. And so we wanted to bring to the table Mint Hill, Matthews, Pineville, Cornelius, Davidson, Huntersville, all a part of that body to decide on how you want to spend that money. And so the priorities were set to build out our bus system, which we've done successfully, but we need to move to the next generation and not go from a hub and spoke, but to a grid system. The second thing that we did was we built the light rail from Pineville to uptown Charlotte. I'm in support of that. I'm even more in support of it going to UNCC because it will create something called the Applied Innovation Corridor and to help us to more clearly define something called the North End, which has enormous opportunity to connect our university with uptown Charlotte and our campus there. But we don't have enough money for an additional leg to take it to where real congestion relief comes from, which is going to take it to our Beltway. So guys, why are we in the transit business in the first place in Charlotte? Well, we shouldn't be in the transit business, and one of the most controversial things that Patrick and I have been a part of, and where we differ, is on this issue of the streetcar. And the streetcar was intended to be something to help restore East Charlotte and restore West Charlotte, but it has turned out that it has become a political football, and it's something that is out of priority with what our partners have said is the most important. And that next priority is to reduce congestion up I-77 to Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. And if any of you all have been with your parents or you've tried to get to the lake at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, good luck, because it's going to take you about 4 hours to get up to the top where Davidson is. That's what people want to see, is they want to see elected officials and their mayor stick to the priority of what you said, and you said we could use your half-cent sales tax for. Otherwise, if we're coming back to you for more money, we're not going to have a whole lot of trust to stand on.
Specifically, what I have done and what I will continue to do is to make sure that we are providing connectors so that transportation can take place. In other words, you heard me mention about the CIP earlier, and that a part of that plan is to be able to produce the necessary infrastructure to be able to move goods by this intermodal facility. If you don't support that plan, you obviously don't support the idea of what we can do to build this economy and to move goods and to expand our tax base and create jobs in the same breath, if you will. The other piece is with regard to support of the 2030 plan. I too support that same plan. I will tell you that it's important for us to make sure that we have connections all throughout the city of Charlotte, because as we talk about the blue line, and having what it needs, we also need to make sure that the red line has what it needs. Relative to the streetcar in itself, you can't just look at the streetcar or any rail system as just a train or just a streetcar. Look at what it brings about to this community. It helps to expand that's going to help to bring retail opportunities, residential and other forms of commercial that again will create jobs, expand our tax base, and allow us to be able to reinvest in our city. That's what's important. And so from that perspective, specifically, I would look in terms of a funding source to find a way for us to hopefully develop the right kind of rapport with our governor and General Assembly about maybe some additional dollars that could be used for the sales tax.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I go to Myers Park High School, and
1 penny.
And both of you talk about how you want to bring jobs to Charlotte through incentives. I was wondering if you could elaborate on what incentives those would be.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. Well, we have a lot of different incentives. We have a business grant incentive. We have infrastructure incentives. We have security incentives. We have a lot of different types of incentives that are out there. I certainly would, on the business investment grants, I have asked for that to go back to the Economic Development Committee, probably about 3-4 weeks ago, for the committee to go back and review how that process is working, to determine if we need to tighten the belt up a little bit more or if it's working fine just as it should be. Because what's important is making sure that Charlotte teams are getting those jobs and that there's decent wages that need to be had as a result of those jobs coming here. There have been some I've supported, others I haven't supported. I will only support business incentives that make good business sense. If they don't make good business sense, as a businessman, I'm not going to be in a position to look to support it. But I think those are some grants that we can take advantage of, and obviously encouraging people to find out what's going on the federal level with economic development incentive grants on that level would be good as well. Thanks.
Quick question to the audience, to your question. How many of you all would like to go to college and then return to Charlotte for a job? Think. This be a place you want to be back in. Okay. All right. Some of you are a little bit reluctant on that. Here's what I'm here to tell you. That concerns me, Patrick, because our tax base just left us. But let me just tell you guys, and let me answer your question. She asked about private sector job creation in the economy and creating jobs, and how do we incent that? The mayor's role really is to build a strong environment in order for you all, when you graduate from college, to have the opportunity to come back. And what I'm here to tell you, and maybe I'm letting something out of the bag that you all don't know, but if you think you're going to come back here and get a job with a bank or an energy company, and that's just going to propel Charlotte's growth forward, I think you got another thing coming, because I think, quite frankly, we're living off past glory, y'all. These two banks in the past 4 years have gone through massive changes from the leadership standpoint, and Charlotte is moving into a more mature city that is going to have to continue to diversify its economy. And what do we have to do in order to incent you to come back here? That's the real question. What are we going to do to incent the best and the brightest students who are here dedicating their night to learn about public service, about this great city and how it works, and what the leadership is hoping to do? And quite frankly, one of the things that I talked about last week in a forum that we attended was, I think what's missing is that we're not creating an environment where risk takers are wanting to come back to Charlotte. If you know anything about California, New York, or Boston, what you know about them is they have some of the most innovative people in technology, the internet technology, entrepreneurial field, that are trying to be a part of creating something that many people want to be a part of, which is a high-growth company that is making a real impact in multiple ways. And we're doing just that in a little incubator up here called Packard Place. But it's alone. It's an isolated island. It's not supported by our traditional business community. And you've got to have a mayor that's going to clear that path for that, so that we can bring in more high-growth opportunities, so that you all won't have to come back here and really think that you're going to work only in two industries, financial services and energy. That's the growth of Charlotte. And to incent it, you have to get back to safe, clean, and affordable city. And an affordable city means that it's a low-cost city.
Hi, thank you both for coming. My name is Sarah Kerman. I'm a senior at North Mech this year, and my question for you both is, previously this youth council had talked with former Mayor Fox about consolidation of city and county government as one cohesive entity, and so my question is, would you be in favor of doing something like that, or moving steps towards that? Or if not, are there things you would do if elected to improve cooperation between the two entities?
Yeah, sure. Her question is about consolidation. It's a topic that this city and this county have been dealing with for almost 45 years. In fact, most of the statutes that we have on city and county consolidation are based off the efforts in Charlotte and Mecklenburg. But what you're asking is a political question. And the political question of consolidation of our city and county resides in the city council and the mayor, and in the county commission who's meeting at this very moment. And so I am not for or against political consolidation, but what I am for is I'm for putting it on the agenda on both bodies to determine who would be in charge. Is it a mayor? Is it a mayor county manager? What is it? When you have two corporations that merge, they know, when Duke and Progress merged, they knew who was going to be the CEO. We don't know that in a political consolidation unless we have a political discussion. But what the real and more achievable goal, and what you're asking, is something called functional consolidation. Our city manager has identified that there are 3 areas that are easy to identify that we should functionally consolidate in, and I'm an advocate for it, and I know Mayor Fox is too, is that we know that EMS, Emergency Management Systems, and Charlotte Fire Department should look at consolidating. Secondly, we know that permitting for land use, both the city and the county. And then the third area, which most people really don't recognize as well too, is that right behind us here is 600 East 4th Street, and we have 2 human resource departments. These are areas and opportunities where we can increase efficiency and improve our savings. So on political consolidation, I'm for the political discussion to be had first. For functional consolidation, you have to proceed very carefully. We do not have a new county manager that's been identified. The last thing I'd want to do as your next mayor is advocate for something like a merger of EMS and CFD before he or she has gotten in their chair and really gotten a handle on the big problems that the county's been dealing with, which are the property tax reval, again, a struggling economy. So it is a timing question, but Mayor Fox is on to a subject that many before me have been on, and we need to consider to look at that.
The topic of consolidation has been around for seems like almost 2 decades, but it's been back and forth, up and down. The issue with it politically, twofold. They may not be politicians, but you do have staff with city and county that would oppose consolidation, largely in part because they want to keep their jobs. That can probably be said for some elected officials too, because the issue on the other side of the water is simply that there are questions about the size and the scope it will be. Will it be 12 officials? Will it be 30 officials? What would it look like in terms of diversity? Who will be able to make decisions on behalf of whom in terms of towns and how they might be represented? So it's probably worth another look, because I will tell you, when the pastures were very green here in the city of Charlotte, we discovered that the savings would have been $4 million, and we dismissed the $4 million because the pastures were so green. But there's some that will say, well, today, a savings is a savings is a savings in some respect. And so it may be worth going back and having a study, but it's going to be important, I think, that we allow the small towns to sort of be the front runners and to show some leadership, rather than it always having to be the chairman of the county commission or even the mayor of the city of Charlotte per se. We're looked at too much sometimes as a bull in an antique shop, and that shouldn't have to be. Good question. Thank you for it.
Hi, Bryce from Roughneck again. As we see more negative changes in our environment globally, how would you like to move Charlotte forward as an environmentally friendly city, whether it's through safe renewable energy, land conservation, recycling, etc.?
Continue to work with the Sierra Club, great entity. And I might add, Edwin actually served, when he was on the city council, as chair of our environmental committee. Did an awesome job with it. And I think there are a few ways that we want to continue to engage with the Sierra Club. But start talking about, transportation issues along the way, recycling, things of that nature. Those are going to be the things that are going to be able to help us, I think, to move us to the next level in terms of where we could be as a community. But we got to get this community more conscious about making sure that they engage in the environmental pieces of all the things that are going on. Global warming, there's still an issue there. Is there a role for us to play? Potentially there is. We have housing stock per se. Would developers be, open to being incentivized to build housing that's green type houses out there where, solar panels may be on them, et cetera. Those are all kinds of things we can explore. I'm always open for that. I will tell you, on the environmental front, one of the things that really concerned me were the number of trees that got excavated or cut down because of billboard companies that didn't want them there. I understand they're in business and they want to be seen, but I think there could have been a compromise if the General Assembly would have said, well, why don't you go and maybe prune the trees? Take them down to move them back some rather than just taking them all the way out. That affected us here in the city of Charlotte, and we couldn't do a thing about it. Not a thing. So, which brings up another topic, and maybe it'll come up as a question. We got to have better working relationships with the General Assembly to make sure that we all see sort of eye to eye. Thanks.
For 4 years, I served as the chair of the Environmental Committee, and one of the things I'm probably most proud of in my time on City Council was a policy discussion that I had with the late Mayor Pro Tem Susan Burgess. Susan Burgess served our city with great distinction, but one of the things that she was a strong advocate for was to make the environment a focus area. We have 4 focus areas prior to that. It is the 5th and the newest focus area. But as chairman, one of the things that we're charged with is to create a vision statement. And one of the things that I led a discussion on was for Charlotte to be a national leader in environmental initiatives balancing growth with sound fiscal policy, and that's exactly how I led. For 4 years, our council debated over a very important asset in this community, which are our trees. And our trees involve both those in the real estate community, but both those also in the environmental community who hold it near and dear to their heart. So how do you marry Birkenstocks with wingtips? I did it. I pulled together two groups that were very separate and very apart from each other. This thing called the Great Recession hit as well too, which caused them to slow down and actually talk with each other. But what we found was we found a good policy, and a good policy to protect our trees and to push towards a 50% tree canopy in this city by 2050. So I'm probably the only candidate who's ever been endorsed by our real estate community and by the Sierra Club, and it's because this candidate shows a lot of balance and understanding of both sides of the issue.
I got those endorsements. I did. You didn't know that?
Oh, man. I thought I was the only one. Thank you.
No. Now, that might be true.
That is true.
That's true.
That's true. I'll concede you. I'll have to take that back now.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Go.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Milana Hopgood, and I go to Northwest School of the Arts.
Northwest. Good.
Okay. Do you have any future plans for downtown expansion renovation? If so, like a budget or a cost for it?
No.
The answer is yes. I would say Patrick's not answering that fully. We have a plan. It's called the 2020 Vision Plan for Center City. Google that, pull it up, and you will see an extremely exciting policy document, which I actually enjoy reading. There's a lot of things that Patrick and I have read that will put you to sleep instantly. That is a good one. Read it. It's very exciting.
Yeah, he's right.
Okay. Hi, my name is Shauna Howard, and I go to Harding. My question is, does the City Council play a role in making our schools successful? And if so, how do you plan to work with CMS to improve our schools?
Yeah, we play a role, real quick. Not a direct role, more indirect, but one of the things that I was responsible for doing was actually bringing back SROs, school resource officers, in CMS schools. We saw what was happening nationally in terms of some things that took place that we really didn't want to see happen in area schools. So I went back and led the effort to get the City Council to reinstitute school resource officers. That's one thing. The other thing is working with the superintendent right now. You all may not know this. Do you all remember Flight 1547? It's the plane that landed on the Hudson River. You all remember seeing that plane up in New York? Okay. So I had a part, or a little role in helping to bring the plane here. It's right now at the Aviation Museum. If you hadn't gone by to see it, go check it out. It's really nice. But it sparked an idea where we would work to engage CMS students and not just CMS students, I want to reach out to all students, but to have them engaged in what would be an apprenticeship program for them to learn how to do aircraft mechanic repair. So that's something that I know the superintendent is very excited about, and I think it's something that we could really work with area schools with. So that's one way, a couple of ways that I've been engaged.
The Peacock plan, as I call it, is 3 Ps. The first one I talked about, which is economic development. Second, you asked a question earlier about transportation, and I share with you my vision there. My vision also includes for the mayor to have a role in education. The mayor is not the lead actor, you all, in this conversation. He or she will never get in front of the school board or the county commission. But guys, this is the overall statement that I know, and why it is a city issue is it is a city issue because schools belong to everybody. And if we look at strong neighborhoods, the one indicator that we find for a strong neighborhood is that it usually has a good school. And so if we can create good schools in every neighborhood, we're going to create a great series of neighborhoods that create a great school system. So how can the mayor play a bigger role? I think like a predecessor and a mentor of mine, Richard Venerud, who created an award for recognizing international companies, I'd like to see a same recognition of teachers in this community and a mayor's teacher and student award ceremony that recognizes and lifts up students all across this region. We hear too many things that are going wrong with CMS. We need to hear more things that are going right in the school system. Dr. Morrison doesn't need less help. Dr. Morrison needs more help. The mayor is the spokesperson for the city, and you can choose to speak what you want to speak about. I want to speak about creating a great educational environment, K-12, CMS, all the way through to our collegiate system, and especially our partners at the community colleges at CPCC.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
This has been the 2013 Charlotte Mayoral Candidates Forum presented by Generation Nation. To learn more about Generation Nation, please visit generationnation.org. To learn more about these and other Charlotte candidates, please visit ncvoterguide.org.